I'm really honored to be here. So I'm actually an alumni business student, so I don't think that we didn't make that connection at first. So it was just like a little bonus. And so I'm really glad to be here. I was going to do this beautiful, like I love PowerPoint, but also I need to be able to just talk to you as well. And plus, government is they're very tight on security with the laptops. So I discovered recently that my new laptop doesn't always work when I try to plug it into external things. Yay, safety and security. But that's okay, because I know about myself. I mean, that should be easy to talk about. I'll try to keep you on, like, make it clear because we don't have visuals, but I'm kind of a visual talker. I like to use examples, like whenever I talk about the skills and the sets that I have, I often talk about I have the cards in my deck, and so I like to create kind of visuals whenever I talk about things, and so hopefully I don't get you off confused and have some visuals for some things. So but anyway, I'm Lisa Duckworth. I'm originally, I grew up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Um, I, uh, let's see, I grew up in a kind of a rough household. My parents were a hot mess and didn't know quite what I was going to do. And so I took some community college classes. So, I actually got a GED. I'm straight up with that. I got my GED and I decided to go to college. And I started taking classes at my local community college there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And then once I got about 15 credit hours, they said that I was thinking of something else. I was like, either I'm going to be a flight attendant, I'm going to join the military, or I'm going to work on a cruise ship. Yeah, I was young, and but it actually, you think about it, no, that's not a bad thing. But I ended up going into the Army. They accepted me with the 15 credits, and then I went to the Army and was a chaplain's assistant for about 6 years. And so I like to say that was a divine intervention for me in a way, because had that not had that, I guess, chapter not opened up for me in my life, I don't know where the heck I'd be, because that was a pivotal moment for me. And so I served in the military for about 6 years as a chaplain's assistant. I had lots of fun. I still keep in touch with some of the chaplains that I worked with. I'm not the most religious person, but I do believe in respect for everyone and everything, but whatever you believe, as long as you're not hurting anyone with that. And so it segued very well as I was getting out of the military, because I didn't know what I was going to do. And I had met and married my favorite veteran that happens to be he grew up in Magna, Utah. He graduated from Cypress High. So go Pirates. Yeah. So my husband Shane and I, we moved here after my military service. And, I joined the military because I needed direction. I needed some college money, and there's, lots of benefits with service. And so when I got out, I was thinking, oh, I'm just going to use my GI Bill. I'm going to go to school. And I started looking at SLIC at the time. And but then I had somebody else approach me and they said, there's this vocational rehab program through the VA. And it was actually a better deal than using my GI Bill. And so I applied, and because you can't serve in the military without getting some kind of injury, whatever. My team and I, we kind of joked that you can't serve more than 4 days without something. It's a rough time, but so I had some service connected disabilities, and so that made me qualified for the voc rehab program. And so I took advantage of that. Originally, they were just going to pay for me to get an AAS in business here at SLIC. And because I had gone to I had 15 credits when I started. I had gone to, I think, University of Maryland while I was in the service. I also went to is a St. Leo College out in Florida. So I had like all this hodgepodge of classes, but nothing really counting towards a degree until I got to that program and came here to Slick. And so I was glad I knocked it out very quickly. So I was like, well, hey, can I just keep going and go to the U? And so they were able to authorize the funding for me to continue on and get my bachelor's in business at the U. And so, so I did that. It was cool. I combined kind of a, working. It was a challenge because we had kids, and so we were, kind of following responsibilities so we could each. Because my husband's an alumni of Slick too, and so we were just juggling it all. We made it happen, and so I was really glad to do that. As I was getting my degree, we did something crazy. I mean, this isn't really career related, but it's life. You know what I mean? While I was going through school, we built a house. I didn't have a job. I'm like, who does that? But we did. And so we built a house, and then while I was getting my bachelor's, and then as soon as I was about 6 months from graduating, I was like, I really want to use. I knew that I wasn't deep rooted in any religions enough, and let's admit it, religious organizations don't really pay very well, but business does, right? So that's what I wanted to do, and so I had been looking and kicking around. Like human resources for a long time. I had taken a human resources class, and it's as one of my required classes, I think at the time. And I really liked it. And I felt like there were things about what I had learned in the military that I could still use. And it wasn't like I just totally was away. So I felt like there was a common thread. And that's one thing I do want to stress with all of you is that whenever you're thinking about anything you're doing in your life, just like try to find that common thread. And then that can kind of help link you through things because we all have unique and dynamic stories. But if you can help people understand the common thread of kind of where you are, or who you are, and why, then that's going to help you as you're looking for roles and developing your career. I know for me, it has been a big part of who I am and what I do. And so, and you're like, what did you do? So I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So after getting the bachelor's degree, I was like, I gotta get a job. I got this house to pay for and this and that. So so I just kept applying for different HR jobs. I didn't care what it was, I was applying to it. And the first role I got was an HR assistant. And immediately, like 6 months, well, 6 months is not immediate, but in retrospect, it seems immediate. They were kind of like, we got more than we bargained for. You're much more than an assistant. So they actually had me rewrite my job description so I could give myself a promotion. So if you get to do that at least once in your career, it is very, very nice, very sweet. So if you ever get that opportunity, don't go, oh no, I don't know what to do. Totally take advantage of it because that's your way you can frame and make the job be more like what you want. Of course, there's always going to be stuff in your roles that you don't want to do. There's always the task or the yucky stuff that's not pleasant. But if you can make most of the job what you really enjoy, and you have that ability to get in there and do that, then totally take advantage. So I was an HR generalist at that company, and it was called Headwaters Incorporated. Since then, they've been bought and sold a few different times. I'm not even sure what their current company name is, but they're still around. And people that I used to work with are still working for that company. I decided that I was going to move on from that position because although it was a really good experience, I was at a corporate level. It was a really good experience, especially for my first role to get in at that high level to be able to just see all of the different things, looking at the enterprise of the organization, the, you know, the structure, policy. So I was able to do a lot of different things. I was able to rewrite the policies. Because I'm a veteran, they put me in charge of, oh, you need to be our veteran expert. Hence the pathway that's still leading me this way too. That, if anything, that's a big common thread of mine as well. But but going through that, so I was kind of just doing different things. And then the recession hit, and so I know I'm dating myself, but there were a lot of, the industry that we were in was based upon a lot of different tax credits. We were trying to do some, like, it was coal mining, reclamation, I know. You had to work there a year to be able to describe what the company did. That's how complicated it kind of was. But we did a lot with energy and mining, and so as we got to a point there, things just weren't working out as planned, and so I was laying off more people than hiring, and I was like, oh, I need to maybe look for something different because I'm not sure about the security of my role. And so I have been interacting with an organization that's called the Employers Council a lot, and a connection there. We got to be pretty friendly with each other. We were meeting each other at different Society of Human Resource Management events that they meet locally. I can tell you all about them with the board of directors now. But we met through that, and she was retiring, and so she's like telling me about her job, and I'm just like, oh, that's amazing. You get to be basically the Employers Council is, and this is a helpful organization. So whether you're in business or you are thinking about starting a business, or you're like, hey, look, our business is small. We don't quite have the need to hire certain positions. You can, kind of ask a friend, and they have employers associations. They're not paying me to say this. I just believe in what they do. But it's a really good organization. It really laid the foundation for me, in addition to my education. I was able to not only understand the concepts of what I had learned in school, but immediately go and help businesses apply it through being an advisor to them on their human resource stuff. The other fun parts of that were we used to get phone calls about employee relations. And so we definitely had interesting phone calls that different organizations had. I'm sure you can imagine all the fun stuff that we had dealt with. But we would advise, and then and then we did workshops. The organization is still around. And they still they do a lot of webinars. So if you ever need to brush up on something, check them out. It's the Employers Council. And so I worked there for a while, and then, as it goes, life happens, right? So after a great family vacation, I came home, and, your health is important. And so, as a woman, I was doing some checks, and I discovered a lump. And so I had to take a year off and then some to basically I had really aggressive breast cancer. And so I had to take a year off of work and go through all the horrible things that go along with that. But I lived, so yeah. And then I continued to be an advocate for that as well. And so that was hard because, I felt like my career was really set on this great trajectory. And the leader of Employers Council was even talking to me about maybe filling her shoes one day. And so whenever you get this, curveball, it's like, holy crap, what the heck just happened? Now I've got to worry about living, like not just going to work and all that. And so that was really hard, but it also put a lot of things into perspective, especially like what's really important and what do I want to be spending my time doing? If as I, hopefully survive this, I want to move forward and live a meaningful life. And after getting through everything, the first role I went into, I feel like I'm going through an interview in a way, but I went to go work for Red Cross. That was the first job that I got out of going through that. And they were very good to me and very kind. The challenge is that with nonprofits, they're nonprofit, and it can be very volatile sometimes. And so they were doing some restructuring because they weren't doing very well financially at the time. And so my position, even though I loved Red Cross, I believe in their mission as well too. I actually got, so I had to take a year off from cancer, and then I get laid off. First job I get, I'm like, what kind of luck is this? Like what kind of things are being thrown at me? I was just like, give me a break. So after that role, I went to work for United Healthcare. I was an HR business. So as I was taking these positions, my levels would go up and up. And so at Red Cross, I was over several different states. I had Utah, Nevada, and then I also covered Idaho, Montana, and I think Wyoming. Yeah, it's been a minute, but it was a lot. It was about 1,300 people all around, and imagine, like sometimes it really did feel like 1,300 people were calling all at once with some kind of HR dilemma. One thing that I did that was very cool at Red Cross is when I got there, they were paying daily overtime to all of their employees that worked in Nevada. And I was like, that doesn't seem right. And I'm like, I think somebody might have misinterpreted the law. And so I started reviewing it, doing a lot of research, and that I contacted our corporate legal that was in Washington, D.C., and I brought it, first of all, I brought it to my boss's attention because I didn't want her to think I was just going rogue. But I, went and we did some research, got in touch with legal. At first, they were like, no, we've interpreted it correctly. Everyone should be paid daily overtime. And I'm like, I don't think so, And so finally, through some back and forth, and then, kind of phoning some old former legal coworkers that I had worked with at Employers Council, I pulled them in, and they were able to help our legal department understand that we had interpreted it wrong, and that we needed to stop paying daily overtime to the Nevada employees, which sounds you're like, if you were getting daily overtime, that's a sweet deal. And so to take that away was challenging because we're like, this is what people have been used to. Even though it was a mistake, they shouldn't have ever had it. We had to go through that. And so we came up with not only a way to, we calculated that it saved Red Cross over $100,000 a year. And so that's definitely one of my proud moments of my work there, is that I was able to help them save at least $100,000 a year. And what's funny is whenever, we were so worried about the employees thinking that was going to be a takeaway, they actually took it really well, because they were like, oh, we knew that we weren't supposed to get it. We were just seeing how long we could get it until you figured it out. And I was like, oh, thank goodness, and then it ended up, we did some pay adjustments, so they weren't hit so significantly. But that was a huge thing. And I think there's times whenever you're the new person with the fresh eyes looking at things, sometimes it's just status quo, and people just, hey, that's just the way it's been, that's the way it's going to stay. And so I try to keep some childlike curiosity about me all the time. And that helps me, not only curious, but it also, I notice things a little bit more than maybe some other people would, and it helps with innovation and creativity. Because you, with business, you really can be very creative. I was at Tech Week all week last week, and let me tell you, my mind's just blown by all the cool stuff that I just heard from some of those entrepreneurs and those different businesses. But the good thing is that with every business they need everyone, and so if tech's not your thing, they still need accountants, they still need people, they need all, they need their own infrastructure, and so there's a place for everyone, I think, and everywhere. Let's see. So then, okay, Red Cross. So moving on, I went worked for United Healthcare for a little while, which that's that whole thing about their CEO recently was just, it was sad, because when I worked for United Healthcare, they were a really good company, and I was drinking that Kool-Aid, and just their culture was so good, and just they wanted you well. And it's just unfortunate about what had happened recently with their CEO being killed. But one thing they, as luck would have it, they restructured again. And so they said, well, you can keep your job if you want to go live in Minnesota. And they sent me to Minnesota in February. Has anyone been to Minnesota in February? It is cold. You go outside and you're just breathing, and it's too dang cold. So I said, this is a lot for me being from Texas and then coming here. So I'm just like, no way. So after that, I ended up moving on to Intermountain Healthcare. And Intermountain Healthcare, I got to do some way cool things. I worked for the home care and hospice group. And in that role, they had me doing some stuff with the veterans. I was on the diversity council. And because I was HR, female, and a veteran, I checked some boxes, we'll just admit it. And that was okay, because I'm like, I got the cards in my deck. I'm playing the cards I have. And for some people, they're like, but I'm like, you really do, you've got to play the cards you have. And so that's what I did there. What was really cool is the person who hired me, eventually, we had we restructured there, but the cool thing with that, I was like, okay, I need to get ahead of this. And so when I heard they were going to be doing some restructuring, I reached out to they had just hired a new chief people officer. And I said, hey, I know there's changes ahead. I want to be part of it, because I've already felt the effect of them. And I was like, I'm getting in on this because I want to be at least aware of what's going on and be able to control some things. And so with that, I was still doing the diversity stuff, but also reorganizing the organization. And so one of the things we did is we reorganized our human resources department and created a centralized, kind of like it was a call center, basically. We created a central call center. So whenever somebody had just like a basic thing, like if you want to call and say, hey, I signed up for benefits, but who's our provider again? Who's the company? You could just call this one number, and there was always someone available to answer. And if not, there was a website that had that information available. It was called Ask HR. And so they developed that. And then I also, one thing we did is we did some employee resource groups. And so I helped found the military caregiver resource group at Intermountain Healthcare. We got that going. And the thing that's very cool now is that I started that, but now in my new role, working as the local veteran employer representative for the state, I go back and I'm helping them as an outside consultant. And so it's kind of cool to see, my it was an ugly baby to begin with, it really was, but it was there, and it was functioning to some point, but when something's new, it's always funky and awkward. And so I was really happy to see that that's continued, and I've been able to work with all the different leaders that have followed behind me since then. I did leave, I ended up leaving Intermountain Healthcare. One thing I did with the restructure, it was, a lot of things were in limbo, and so there were support structures that should have been there that just weren't there to support. And I had like 1,500 employees there, and healthcare is challenging. If you think about it, when you're going to the doctor, most people, it's not like going to the spa. Most people don't want to be there, and so there's just, it's a big challenging environment. Some of the stability got really bad. It got, with some of the employee relations issues, it got where employees didn't want, like, even though my intent was to help them, I felt they just felt very attacked. And some were like threatening violence, and I was like, mm-mm. I was like, I did not deal with this in the Army. I'm not going to deal with it here. And so I kind of, kind of dipped out and thought I'd go work for the city of Salt Lake. And so I worked there. That was kind of out of the frying pan into the fire, because there too, they were going through some changes. They were changing the mayor and all that. And so, yeah, I'm giving you the history of Mesa, aren't you? But anyway, we moved on, and one thing that was really cool, I got to be part of the mayor's council for veterans there. We did a cool little event. It was right as COVID was hitting. We did a thing over at the Memorial Park over by the Capitol. It's Memorial Grove. A lot of people don't realize that, but that's actually a veterans memorial park. And so if you want to know, get up to date on some military history or know about veterans and different wars, that's it's a beautiful place to check out, so I recommend it. But yeah, so we did this beautiful thing, and so and then it was funny because I was still working for Salt Lake, and then I went to go work for the state. And I left the state, or I left Salt Lake City on a Friday. And I don't know if you guys remember when they burned the cop car downtown, and yeah, that was the day after my last day at Salt Lake City. So I was HR to the 911 dispatcher, so I was texting them while that was happening and just saying, hey, are you okay? And they were like, we're locked in here, we can't leave. They're like, we're rethinking our life choices right now. And so, but it was nice. I still stay in contact. I actually still do a lot with 911 in this role as well. But went over to the state. Nobody had really taken my role, and just I took a whole different perspective on it because I had been in human resources for so long. And I also am very active with the Human Resource Society. I have a certification and all that. And actually, oh yeah, and then in between all that, I decided to go to grad school. And yeah, and I got my master's in management and leadership. I started with the executive MBA at the U, and whoo, that thing was expensive and it was tough. And in the middle of everything going on, it was just too much. And so I do know that one thing I have learned, like I'm not a quitter, but I'm also not someone who likes to feel like I'm losing either. And so like there's a time when you gotta cut your losses. And so that's what I did. And I was like, and then also my leader at the time, actually a couple of leaders, one was the chief people officer, and one's the chief nursing officer at Intermountain Healthcare. They were like, nobody cares where you get your degree from, they just want that you have a degree. And I was like, well, now you tell me, so that was good. I got my master's in June of 2020. It was very lackluster. And then right before that, I found out that I'm a woman, but I had celiac, so I'm like, not only is it COVID, but can't even eat cake, you know? And I'm like, dang it, and go walking. And so it was just kind of a, like, yay, it happened, and I have this master's, but it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows like I'd hoped it would have been. And yeah, I joke that I will eventually get my PhD so I can just do some kind of graduation ceremony. Plus, Dr. Duckworth has a nice trip to it, right? So, so yeah. So what I guess moving on, I gave you the history, some of my pathway, because and I wanted to share that with you because everybody has a unique and dynamic pathway in their own. You can look at some people and you're like, oh, I need to follow this, and this is going to get me where I need to go. But you know what? Life happens. And so being able to pivot and stay within that thread of commonality it's going to be something very helpful for you. It's going to help you be more nimble and resilient as just things get thrown as life challenges get thrown at you. And so one thing I do, like I'm big about helping people. And I think it kind of goes into just how I'm wired. And then, the chaplain's assistant. And I know some people think HR is just like the principal's office, but I was actually one of those weirdos that really like people, who really want to see people grow. Whenever people came to talk to me about tuition reimbursement, I would be so excited and I would be like, oh, tell me what you're doing. Like, let's write this up. And I would be on it because I wanted to make sure that people that are trying to do professional development on their own, it takes a lot more effort versus you have this training class, go sit in it. And so I was always just really, I might have been more passionate about it than they were sometimes, but I think that helped a lot of people stay focused, and they knew that whenever they were going for those programs, and wanting to get that reimbursement for their school, they're actually going to get it. Because I know in some cases it always feels like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. So, but fast forward, I guess, to 2020 is when I started this role. It was interesting to start a job in the middle of the pandemic because nothing was going on. And all the people they say, oh, you should go talk to, all the meetings and things where you could network, nothing was happening. And so I've been on LinkedIn a very long time. And I encourage all of you to connect to me. I'm shameless. I love to share things. So it's Lisa D, and there's actually a little duck emoji. So Lisa D Duckworth. And just feel free to connect to me. I share a lot of things about the job market and things like that. But I was using and leveraging LinkedIn to help make connections and reestablish connections that I had already had from years prior in other work relationships. Because, like when I worked for Employers Council, they had over 500 different member companies. And so going into this role, and you're probably, what does this role do? So the main purpose of the role is that I work with employers that have an interest in hiring from the military veteran community. I help them know where to find them. I help them know what to do, like, because everybody says they want to hire a veteran for all these different skills, and then they hire them, and then they'll have them, they don't utilize them to their full potential. And so I try to help them, like, not only hire military veterans and their community. And see, this is the whole thing. I'm not just like Miss Veteran centric. Please don't think that. Because the way I look at it is that although there's not always going to be enough veterans for every role. And so as we're searching, if I find an employer a great candidate for one of their roles, that's a win. And hopefully the next time, whenever we're, maybe have another chance, maybe I will have a veteran that is the perfect fit. But in the meantime, let's just help each other out because we're all in this together. And a win is a win for me. It's a win-win situation. And so with that, so I work for the state, I'm doing that. The other part is that we have staff that work in the employment centers. And we have other partners all across, so we have Veterans Affairs, we have different not-for-profits, and just lots of people doing great. Utah is like the do-gooder. You can't throw a rock without hitting a non-for-profit about something, right? And so we work together a lot with common goals. And so I don't just go, well, I'm government and I've only got to stick with government things. Is that all, like if I know somebody's like an electrical engineer and we're having trouble finding something for them, I have HR friends that have electrical engineering staffing companies. And I can be like, hey, hey Tina, what's going on? And I've got this veteran or I've got this person I've met through networking, and let's all get together and see what we can do to help. We always make sure everybody has skin in the game though, because it doesn't do anybody any good. Like, even though it would be so great to just go, here's a job, go work. No, you've got to make sure you got the right fit for both the employer and the veteran. And so as my staff is working with the veterans in employment centers, they're getting them job ready. And then I'm basically kind of the one that puts it all together. I'm a connector. I say that a lot. And so through these connections, I have my connection with the HR Society. I have a few things that I brought here too. And then also, I'm not promoting this, I'm just mentioning it. There's also an initiative for women that I'm an advisor for. It's called A Bolder Way Forward. And so they're doing I'll just let you, if you're interested in learning more, but it's just like with veterans, the way I look at it is that we may target a certain group initially, but the benefit is for everyone. And so I'm an advisor. So whenever they're talking about things, like some of the things they talk about is, let's say, okay, we were all kids at one time. Childcare is important, or you may have kids. Just making sure that we have good, adequate childcare for when we have kids, or childcare for you when you were growing up is important too. But whenever they're talking about things like that, I'll be one of the advisors that says, okay, well, when you're thinking about childcare, are you thinking about maybe a military person's schedule, or what would you do if one of them got deployed? How would that work? Does it need to be more of a nanny? Things like that. So there's a lot more considerations that may need to go into play, just depending on the specific situation. And so I advise on that a lot. I oversee a program with the state of Utah. I'm super proud. This was an ugly baby. Like I inherit a lot of ugly babies, let me tell you. But this is probably it's now a cute toddler, I should say. And it's called the Utah Patriot Partnership. And so part of my role, actually, when I interviewed, they said, we have this program, we want you to review it and tell us what you would do different or better. Like if you were going to revamp it, what would you do? So I'm a geek and I love lean manufacturing and Six Sigma and all that kind of stuff. So I did a strategic A5. So you want to write that down, because if you ever need to just get your thoughts together into a clear, concise way, an A5 may be very beneficial for you. And just put it on your radar, because I know you're like drinking from the fire hose trying to finish your school year too, but I definitely recommend it. So I did a strategic A5. So basically I just said, hey, this is the program as it's almost like a SWOT analysis, but you're also talking about steps you take. And so one of the things I said is we need to remarket this thing. It was hideous. It was just not engaging or anything like that. And so it's called the Utah Patriot Partnership Program. We actually talked about maybe even changing the name, but the vote was to keep it the Patriot Partnership, but we'll see with all the fun political stuff going on. But whenever someone first got involved with this, so an employer signs, they sign a pledge. And they say, I pledge to give priority employment considerations to people in the military veteran community. Now, we're not telling them to discriminate at all. It's more like, hey, if you've got a veteran here or a veteran spouse and they're the best candidate, then obviously you should hire them. But if you've got two and you're like, which one? We hope you're gonna maybe lean a little towards the veteran spouse. And so that's it. We leave the interpretation of what that looks like to them, because the last thing I want to do is go tell somebody some kind of illegal discrimination, because I'm way, way against that. Yeah, I can talk a lot, but anyway, this is I just like to show the marketing because I'm proud. So this is the pledge they would take, which is basically that they pledge to give priority employment consideration. And this was not something we really pushed. They would make the pledge and then they never saw it again. And so I was like, well, we need to remind them what they pledged to do. And so not every business is going to put this up, but there are a lot of them that do. And so I get a little, excited when I walk into a business and I see this hanging up. They get a certificate signed by the governor that basically says that they're a part of the partnership. This is just an example, as you can see, yeah. And then this is the fun thing. So they used to have these bumper sticker looking things, but now we have a window decal. So if you go into a business and you see something similar to that, you go, oh, Lisa Duckworth was there, So, and I have a lot of partners that help with this, but obviously this is my little toddler that I'm dragging around, and so I tend to be the main point person for most of it. And so that's just so this is an example of just what a welcome packet would look like whenever we would bring an employer on and just have them be part of that partnership. And then one thing I really like to do is that as I work, there's another program called the Hire Vets Medallion Program. And so we've had some great opportunities with, when I first started, there was only like a few Utah employers that were involved. And since then, like we have Arbinger Institute, they're like a global leadership company. They teach amazing things. So if you've not heard of them, get them on your radar. But what's cool is they got the Hire Vets Medallion Award. And there's a video that we did, I'm in it. And so like on Veterans Day, they were pushing out their video. And I was like, oh. And then I'm like, oh, why did I get that email? You never like yourself on camera, I think, but yeah, okay, yeah. And so I want to open it for Q&A. I think that's probably a good stopping point. I think I've given you enough enough information to make you dangerous, so yeah. So what questions you guys got? Yeah.
On one.
Yeah, go for it.
How did you come up with your mantra?
My mantra?
Yeah.
Oh, which one?
Life is good, work can be fun, and no matter what challenge, you can always find something positive.
Well, you know what? I came up with that more so like after everything. Yeah, I think about all the hardships I've gone through. Like I beat cancer and came back to work, and trying to come back to work with chemo brain is very difficult. And so I'm a scrappy, gritty person, and so I figured like I don't want to live a life that sucks, and so that's where I came up with that. Thanks for looking, I'm flattered.
So I mean, I'm older too. I remember the time before social media. How did social media becoming more prevalent affect HR rules, laws? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's say, okay, well, I had to internalize it, because actually I get in good trouble on social media,
Yes.
because I work for the state. And I sometimes forget to use our communications department, and they don't appreciate my creativity all the time, so. Yeah, but with social media, like, I remember when it was first coming out, like, I remember we were just figuring out the internet when I was getting out of the military. And so as it's grown, like, I remember writing the first social media policy. And I've actually had some situations where people, like, we had somebody who was on FMLA, and she said she had some kind of shoulder injury, but posted pictures of her ripping out tile floor. And I was kind of on the fence, because I'm like, this is new. I lean on the kinder side typically, because I really don't like to terminate people. I thought, well, she's really gonna learn a lesson. Well, they decided that they wanted to terminate that. And then what happened is, the reason we saw it, because she was friends with a bunch of coworkers, they all saw it and they're like, wait, she's not here. So they're all going up to the leaders and look at this. And it used to be there were a lot of like, when it was first really being discussed, they considered a lot of social media protected concerted activity because of the union laws. And since then, there's been more case law to help us understand what can and can't be held against people. So if you have a public profile and you say you're an FMLA and you're ripping tile up off the floor, you kind of get what, you may have some consequences. Now, there's other times, so if you were on there saying, you know what, I feel like we should all get a raise, and then 4 of your coworkers chime in and say, we think we should too, what are we gonna do about it? That may be protected concerted activity. And so as an HR person, you're like, ooh, I do not want to mess with the National Labor Relations Board, because they have a big teeth. And so that's just one example. But I think one thing I always tell people is, like, if you're, especially with recruiting, your LinkedIn profile is kind of like your advertisement. And so whatever you put on there, that's what people are going to see. And I think I've gotten into a point in my career where I'm just like, I own who I am. And if somebody doesn't want to hire me because I'm a cancer survivor or I'm a veteran or whatever, I'm going to work from anyway. So if they find out all about me and it's held against me, that's fine. I don't want to be involved with something else. Anyone else? And I know we're coming up on, that was quick. I could just be all that. Yeah. I like to have, I guess kind of my mantra. But I just feel like whatever you do, have fun with it, make sure you're doing something you enjoy. Because life's too short to do things that aren't fun. And there's always going to be it's just part of life that if the majority is all things that you want to do, then keep on keeping on, right? Yeah. And I'm adventurous. So, like, even like, I'm not young and I have braces. Like, I don't know. But the time for you is the right time. So whatever your timeline is, whatever you're doing, that's what works for you. Don't worry about we do to a certain extent, but in general, own who you are. That's all.
Any last question? Thank you so much for coming.
If there's any of this stuff you'd like, is anyone here a veteran? I didn't even ask. Duh. Okay, well, that's fine. It doesn't mean anything. I have some cards. So the Smith Entertainment for Veterans Day, they filled out a bunch of thank you cards for veterans, and they asked me to hand them out. So whenever I'm out in public, I'm always offering them to veterans. I thought they might have tickets and no, no such luck.
All right, maybe you guys will see about next Tuesday.
Yeah, oh, and one thing I did not mention, so I'm, I work for Department of Workforce Services. If you're, if you're just wanting to get familiar with the job market or know what's available in Utah, we do have virtual job fairs every other month. And I help coordinate those, so if you're interested in those, feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn and I can help direct. You just go to jobs.utah.gov. If you're registered as a job seeker, you can just elect to go and participate. But I recommend it, even if you're not actively looking, is just get familiar with maybe what's out there and maybe what kind of, if there's something you need to build on, like, well, it's kind of that accounting class kind of kicked my butt or something that maybe I need to brush up on this if I want that one job, and then where that's at and then what it looks like.